So on to the Double Dragon live action movie, the Oscar-winning performance here.
Okay,
I got that behind me now. I got that on.
Yeah. Oh God.
I
So
I'm
the
sorry,
plot
go
of
ahead.
that one. Now there's a thing I didn't know. I didn't know about the Double Dragon games back then. Like the story for me, it was just to kidnap the girl and the two guys got to save her. As far as I could tell, at least in my perspective, maybe looking back at it now might be different. But back then, I didn't remember like the backgrounds looking like post-apocalyptic. It just looked normal-ish, the woods and stuff like that. But so when the movie was, again post-apocalyptic, I want to say like 10,000 times in this episode. I was like, well, that's stupid. Why throw that in there? But I guess no, it was the game. But yeah, well, I guess that take place in what year was it? Like 2016 or some year that
2007.
Wow. You remember that giant flood in 2007 that wiped us almost all out and they renamed LA to New Angeles? And then
actually, I think they said it happened like earlier. It's like 2000 or 90. I don't know. The bottom line is the year was 2007 when this movie was taking place. I was like, really? Oh my God. I used to have jeans like that in school at the time. So yes.
And Vanna White was a news reporter and she is not there.
You need to bear in mind, I was here. We were going to be fighting Terminator right now. Okay,
right. You're right.
I guess it was good. It wasn't fucking Louisiana.
Yeah. So that movie, the most I remember is that in this iteration, because one thing that's gonna come back to all these different things, and I'll kind of sum it up near the end. The Double Dragon is that again, it's a very basic story. It's street level. It's two guys fighting gangs, get the girl back. Nothing too crazy except for the giant green alabos, maybe. That was something that was kind of crazy about the old game. But like in this movie, they're living with this I guess guardian named Satori, and they got one half of a Double Dragon medallion and just like a big legend or whatever that the two halves are put together, powers or whatever. The kind of stuff you want to prevent. So Koga Shuko, played by Robert Patrick, which is the bad guy of this movie, has one half of the medallions already, and he wants to get the second one from them, So the most I remember is fight scene happens, they burn down their home, and Satori dies in the fire, and the dragons are kind of figuring out what to do with their lives now. And Shuko gets literally all gangs together to like one big mega gang, basically a bounty on their asses. There's like a big ass fight with crazy stuff because it's the movie, so gangs wear all kinds of stupid ass costumes. You had clown themed ones and mailman themed ones and whatever. And
yeah, that was wild.
Marion was there. Boy, was she there in that movie. And
the only thing anybody remembers about this fucking movie is that the guy from Terminator 2 was in it, and that like Mark Dacascos, I'm fucking that up, but he went on to do other unfortunately poor video game adaptations, but he's usually good, so big ups to him. But yeah, they remember that. They remember it being the first like memorable movie from the Terminator 2 guy. And of course they remember Alyssa Milano with the pixie cut.
Yeah.
That green tank top.
Yep.
And shorts.
Yeah, we the cultured people say that those shorts were packed with personality. So
code. And you know what's even better is that's the last time anybody paid attention to her until Charmed. Ain't that fucked up? Like when Charmed came out, they would have to say, and Alyssa Milano, most recently of Street Fighter Double Dragon the movie. Like, wow, that's a whole fucking lot of resume. But she's recovered nicely since then, so I guess she's doing okay. But holy shit, like what a fucking dap.
I mean, at least Fox was smart about it. When they put Robert Patrick on the X-Files years later, they didn't bring up Double Dragon. They just went Terminator's Robert Patrick. They didn't go Double Dragon's Robert Patrick.
To be fair, I have seen him in worse things. I've seen him in better things too. He's good. He's good. He's legitimately good. Obviously, everybody remembers him as the T-1000, but he was fan-fucking-tastic in Striptease, which all jokes aside, people watch it for the obvious reasons, but it is a legitimately good fucking movie that is always worth watching. It's very funny, and everybody in the very incredibly talented cast gives a stellar performance. Striptease is an awesome movie. I will defend to the death, even though, yes, There's the obvious reasons you watch it, but that's not the only reason you watch it. And he was a great fucking villain in that. And he wasn't the worst thing about this movie either.
Oh, Ricky, doesn't that old guy remind you of Ric Flair in Striptease?
Yes.
So it was like, oh, my angel, my angel. It reminded me of Ric Flair. The only thing missing was woo, you know.
Burt
I'm gonna
Reynolds'
get that
character.
angel and take her to space bound, woo, you know.
Yeah, Burt Reynolds' character in that was, and God bless Burt Reynolds, man, he was a gem. But yeah, he was a classic in that movie too. But yeah, you can't go wrong with the cast of that movie. But yeah, I saw Robert Patrick after this movie. The next thing I saw him in was a movie I think it was made for cable in the mid-90s. He did with Terry Hatcher from Adventures of Superman, Desperate Housewives. Terry Hatcher, she played a lot of stuff. But so right before she got famous, she did a lot of crappy made-for-cable movies. And then they all started coming out at once when she got the Superman gig because she was naked in most of them. So this was one of those. So after this movie, Double Dragon, and before or right around the time of Striptease, Robert Patrick did this movie Cool Surface with Terry Hatcher. So at least he got to feel her up and stuff, but it's not a good movie. He ends up killing her and putting her in a dumpster. So Robert Patrick has a history of playing not nice guys, but he seems like a very nice guy. In fact,
actually, it's funny because he was going to be playing a really nice guy if the script went through, because apparently John Carpenter had put in a script to Marvel right after the success of Terminator 2 to do a Spider-Man movie and have Robert Patrick play as Peter Parker.
I don't know if I would have bought that, but it's an idea.
That's I can't even picture that now.
Yeah,
I can't picture it. I can't picture it, but he pitched it, and Marvel just kind of went, "Yeah,
We don't like money."
no."
To give credit to Robert Patrick, it appears that he usually goes out of his way not to trash the movie, the production, the people he worked with, everything I read about it. When asked, he usually puts them over. He said he felt like the character was interesting. He said he loved the cast. He said it was a fun experience, but the movie didn't turn out so great. But one person did claim in my reading, I read somebody claim that they met him at like a convention or something. And it was mostly like Terminator 2 pictures and stuff. And the guy's like, yeah, I went up to Robert Patrick and I said, man, it's too bad they don't have any Double Dragon 8x10s for you to sign. And he was just like, yeah. But he seems like a good sport about it, so good for him,
Yeah. So anyways, Alaba was in the movie, Linda was in the movie, these two guys, like twins, were in the movie. And I don't know if it was on purpose or not, but I kind of want to, at least my headcanon is they were in there to kind of remind us of how these beat-em-ups always have these, twin characters, like every character's got a pilot swap, you know what I mean? But I don't know. That's just
very
me.
likely.
Yeah.
Very likely.
So Alaba gets mutated to a super giant buff Big Trouble in Little China version of himself, which I always thought was stupid and unneeded, but okay. And then
for the sake of a movie, I like that they at least tried to explain why there's a guy like this,
Yeah. But I'm thinking it's because it's a video game movie. There's no stuff in there. It's a game. There's no fantasy crap in there, even though it's not much.
Is it wrong that I was actually feeling sorry for him?
Yeah.
Well, what I felt sorry about was that they basically recycled plot elements from the fucking Super Mario Brothers movie to make that happen. You notice that?
Yeah. It was kind of similar to the machine, the chair thing and all that.
What they did with Toad and Spike, right?
Yeah.
Very similar thing.
So I don't remember much of the in-between stuff other than the giant. I think that was like their money shot. I think you told me once, Ricky, how each movie always has like this real big, the most expensive part of the movie. That like the Turtles movie was, the Michael Bay one was the whole sliding down the
snow.
So I think this one, their big shot was the fight with the boat and the place they were trapped with the over 1,000 extras in there and all that shit, But after all that, they end up in the hideout, Shuko's hideout. Shuko, it's weird. They never really explain how the medallions work on their own. The half that he has makes them turn into some kind of weird shadow creature that can kill you or possess you. So he possesses Jimmy. Yeah, he possesses Jimmy. So they fight, and during the fight, I guess he kicks Shuko out of him or whatever, but then Shuko manages to get both sides of the medallion and puts them together. And somehow that turns him into two weird samurai warrior demon things with swords. And I'm like, okay, you're going to take over the city like that?
There's a lot of inconsistencies in the movie. There really are. I was going to say real quick because it's on right behind me now. Speaking of stuff, one thing that jumped out with me with this movie, right now they're doing the car chase scene, and I was watching that, and that reminded me of the fucking Super Mario Brothers movie as well. Like, am I the only one who sees that there's parts of this movie and the Super Mario Brothers movie that are similar, and that's not necessarily a good or bad thing, but it's definitely
I know.
You notice?
Yeah, not
and well, you were
that
telling
the
me
movie
also
was
earlier
taken
today
on the Universal Studios theme park sets. The big boat scene was actually done between the actual Jaws themed scene and the Waterworld stunt setup that they had back in the day at the Universal Studios theme park.
You're talking about the boat chase scene?
Yeah.
So that's actually a very interesting segue too, because I found out something very interesting about that shit too. That was one of the money shots the movie was built around for sure. Very expensive scene. They took 700 gallons of gasoline, 200 gallons of alcohol, and what's interesting is they notified everybody who was like all the neighboring residential areas, anybody close by. They were like, "We're going to be blowing some up tomorrow," or around like what time it was. They're like, "You're going to hear something blow up. Don't freak out." But they did anyway. Like there was like over 200 EMS calls within the first 10 minutes after they did the big boom thing, you know? So that was kind of nuts to read about. Like they really worked the marks on that one.
I remember in the Street Fighter movie, they had to warn the people because they were filming in, I think, either Thailand or Cambodia somewhere with all the tanks, and they had to tell them that, we're filming a movie. We're not, this isn't like the resistance or rebellion or whatever. We're just filming a movie here. Don't let the tanks scare you and all that. But so anyways, the Lee brothers managed to defeat Shoga whatever the fuck his name is. I forgot his name right now.
Shoga Shuko.
Thank you. They defeated Shuko. The medallions fall off. One of the funny things was when he had them, the brothers were like, "Oh," he's like, "You said it." So now they have them, and he's like, "Oh, you said it." And when they fuse them, because logic, now they're wearing, blue and red outfits because, hey, just like the games, and they whoop his ass, no powers, just the cool outfits. And
they get the outfits and then they whine about it, which is like kind of taking the piss out of the whole scene, right? It's like, that's one thing the Super Mario Brothers movie didn't do when they finally show up and they're not even the game costumes, but the ones that kind of look like it. It's kind of dumb, but it would have been even dumber if Hoskins turned to Leguizamo and said, "I feel like a fucking idiot." You know what I mean? But that's what they do in this movie.
No. I'm sorry. The problem with that is I can imagine Bob Hoskins saying that. Ironically.
He did in real life 100 times, I promise you. But it didn't make the final cut of the movie, is my point. And in this movie, Billy turns to Jimmy. He's like, "We really have to wear this?" And it's like, "Well, dude, yes, you look like Donnie and or Marie, but just roll with it, man."
Well, all I can say about this movie, like I said, I finally saw it for the first time. I remember when it was out, but yeah, I didn't go see it. I don't know. Like I said, I just wasn't into the Double Dragon thing, didn't play the games. All I have to say is, like, yes, I can definitely see similarities to the Super Mario Brothers film, especially with the ending too. The ending with the two twin dudes, they're still literally trying to get to the medallion or whatever. That felt very Super Mario-ish. Yeah. It was super cheesy. It just screamed 90s to me. And the other thing that got me just seeing all these familiar faces. I was like, hey, I remember that guy. I don't remember what from, but I know that guy. And one of the thugs, I was looking at him, one of the Mohawk dudes. I was like, oh my God, I so know him. What do I know him from? And then it finally hit me. He was that dude from Weird Science, the actual TV show. He was the main character in there, and it finally hit me.
I can't remember his name either, but you're right. You're right. They got Vanna White in this fucking thing somehow.
And George Hamilton, Andy Dick, Vanna White, and I like, and you know what? As bad as this movie is, I don't know. With all the gang stuff, it feels more like River City Ransom to me. I was like, this is Ghost Dragon.
Let's be honest, man. This movie must have had a white gimmick budget to get some of those people to come on, because why the fuck else would you have Vanna White, Andy Dick in a fucking Double Dragon movie unless they were like, hey, well, you know, we got
George Hamilton. And then like I said, George Hamilton, I mean, that threw me too. I mean, it was like him in here too. Then you got Robert Patrick, and I was like, that threw me.
Yeah.
Robert Patrick might have done it for the interest, but Andy Dick, you know, his negotiation process in the first place, when you're trying to get Andy Dick in your movie, it's like, well, don't even bother giving me money, just stick it up my fucking nose because it's faster.
Yeah. So anyway, two things I want to bring out in the movie was the cheesy line exchange, because of course Milano was from Who's the Boss, and I forgot who played Linda Lash, but she was from General Hospital.
When I first saw her, I was like, oh my gosh, she played Felicia. And the thing is, the only reason I know that because my grandmother used to watch General Hospital, and I was forced to watch it. And I just don't know why. I remember her character name was Felicia. I remember the guy her character was involved with a little bit because I used to watch it with my grandmother.
Yeah.
So and I said, oh my God, her acting was terrible.
So we get this cheesy exchange that when they're gonna fight, is the obligatory, hey, the good girl and the bad girl, obviously they must fight. You know what I mean? What's her name? Marion Milano says to Felicia, I guess, says, well, generally when I fight ends up in the hospital. Har har har.
I thought that was a good line.
And then Linda whoops her ass, and Linda's like, now who's the boss? So they kind of changed.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty. I actually kind of like that. And like I say, even if I would have seen that back then, I would have gotten the joke because I knew, I used to watch Who's the Boss anyway. And I used to look at General Hospital with my grandmother.
And the second thing to notice, it was like the weirdest casting, was that Jimmy Lee was played by Mark Dacascos. I forgot how it's pronounced. I know it's spelled.
Yeah.
Mark Dacascos.
Yes, who's an actual martial artist. And Billy Lee is played by, I forgot his name, but he was from a show called
Scott Wolf.
Just
Scott Wolf.
Yeah, Scott Wolf, not a martial artist. So I was telling Jupi the other day that it was almost like an 80s Ninja Turtle fighting alongside the 2003 Ninja Turtle, because one of them did the actual flips and kicks and stuff, while the other was like throwing gumball machines around and wiffle bats and, just using whatever random knickknack he had around, slapstick, basically.
I remember. I think that was the backlash of the movie that I forgot the name. The actor
He's still here.
Costco's is an actual martial artist, and the other guy, I called him the 90s guy because I think he was in several of those 90s-ish. I think it was in the 90s, right? TV shows that they do back in the day. But he wasn't like a martial artist or anything like that.
Yeah, what's his face? He's a real martial artist. Played Jimmy, and I was looking at him like, I know him. I know his name. I mean, I've heard his name. I know his face. I just couldn't place him, and then I finally placed him. And it finally came to me, American Iron Chef. That terrible. It was so awful. He was the chairman on there. It's like, oh my God, I remember how I used to like dog him because I say he is no Kaga Takeshi. Nobody can hold the camera.
He was the chairman, that's right.
No one can hold the camera to Kaga
the
Takeshi.
Crow in Stairway to Heaven, the TV series.
He did fucking Crow Stairway to Heaven, which was fucking like he's not bad in it. That's the thing. Like, he's like how do you say it? He's like the dude from Mortal Kombat who played Liu Kang, Robin, whatever the fuck his name is. It's like the same thing. Like, he does a lot of shit, but he's good in it. Like, he's consistently watchable. But unfortunately, they get stuck with bad projects because the Costco's, he did the Stairway to Heaven gimmick, and he ended up also doing the other fucking one.
And it's actually funny you brought up Mortal Kombat because in the Mortal Kombat Rebirth series that was on YouTube, he was Kung Lao.
Yeah. So he gets around too, he's one of those guys, like you said, you see him and then it takes you a minute. It's like, what the fuck is this guy's name and where did I see him? But I know him.
Yeah.
And then eventually it comes to you,
Yeah,
He's always right
that That was me with pretty much this entire movie. It's like I'm seeing faces like, well, I know that person. I know that person. I've seen that person. I know that, like that. And it was
Like,
kind of driving me nuts.
God, it's the wrong scene. She was up before me, but like Satori, we were talking about the Asian
Their
chick,
legal guardian or something.
the one who ends up getting bloated up or whatever for no goddamn reason. By the way, like she was like 2 steps behind them. She could have very easily gotten out. They just decided
But
to blow
she
her up.
locked them out so they could get away, which was that was kind of pointless.
But okay, so you walk out behind them and close the door, and then all 3 of you get away.
Yeah.
Like that was the dumbest shit. And it's like literally like we joke about these things, right? But this is literally a case of like, well, female character gets fridged to somehow motivate the main characters later. I guess it's pretty much because they have her talking head comes back as a ghost during the very end of the movie final fight scene, which they don't talk to, recognize, or talk about ever again. So it's pretty fucking pointless. Like she literally could have just been still alive standing next to them saying, go kick their asses, and then they would do it. So her dying was fucking pointless as fuck. They just killed her off to essentially motivate the other characters, which is there's times when people point that out and they're like, it's a bullshit argument. It's really not a bullshit argument in this case.
Yeah.
This movie it felt very cliche in a lot of ways, and that's definitely one of them.
She was another one of those people because I saw this movie. It came out in '94, but I saw it on cable after the fact. Maybe like 2001. I saw it on like weekend afternoon cable. One of those movies that like TNT would throw on just when they were trying to kill 2 hours on a Saturday afternoon. And that's where I've seen it from. And I remember seeing her, and I'd already seen her in some other shit. I saw her in. She was in fucking Rambo 2. That was like one of the first big things she did. But I knew her from Sidekicks with Chuck Norris. Remember that fucking movie?
Yep.
That movie came on all the fucking time. So I remember seeing her in that. And this is one of those movies where they have that kind of cast where it's full of people where you're like, I know them. What do I know them from? And then the whole movie's full of that. So it's cool, It's an unfortunate project, but the cast you can't really say too much bad about. Material in it.
But the funny part was they never really explained who she was because she's not from the games either. You know what I mean? And I forgot. I think it was either Nostalgia Critic or one of them people reviewed it. And when they got to that part and she died in a fire, she's like, "Oh no, their mother, sister, lover,
indeterminate.
Who is she? That kind of thing.
That chick they hung out with or lived with or something." Her real life age is vague, by the way, so you can't even really tell. And she has a fairly. It's hard to tell how old she is by looking at her, right? Because she's very gracefully. She could basically be 30s, 20. Maybe not 20s, but at the time, you could wonder, like, is she supposed to be a sister, cousin, aunt, mother? She looks a little young to be their mother, right? But it's like, it's a weird relationship. It's never really expanded upon.
See, until it said that she was their guardian, I just thought that she was just a friend of theirs.
Yeah, because again, she's not in the games anyway, so it's even like.
And like, what's the point of killing her if you're only going to have the little Tinkerbell moment at the very end where she, but they don't even talk to the fucking ghost of her head or whatever the fuck, and then it's never mentioned again. Like, it's stupid. Like, she didn't even need to get killed. That was dumb. And the way they did it was dumb. Like, she could have gotten out of that. That was some fucking Jack and Rose could have both fit on the door bullshit.
It felt like, to me, the movie felt like they were trying to like hit so many different kind of points. Like things you would have seen like in other kind of movies, like you have your sacrifice your character that sacrifices themselves and try to make some growth for the other characters, which was a pointless sacrifice.
They could have sacrificed Roper or Williams, like.
Yeah, you're flipping through the pages and it's like, well, somebody has to die here because this is how these movies work. And it's like...
Yeah. It felt like they were trying to do a by the numbers thing and they were just failing on pretty much all the points. I didn't check to see who was the director because whoever was the director did not give very good direction to the actors, in my opinion. I think all the actors, well, I don't know about some of them, but I know they're capable of doing their acting abilities. They have the capability, is what I'm saying. Well, even wasn't even played the father, with Marion's father. I even knew him, and yeah, he wasn't that bad. But
in defense, with not like sort of a backhanded defense because it's not defensible. But the gentleman, James Ukich, I'm probably saying that wrong, but the director, it was his first movie. So I will say that immediately so much makes sense about the movie when you know going in that this is somebody's first project out of fucking college or whatever, right? So given that, like, it's not as bad overall as it maybe should be for a guy who never directed a full movie. It's more competent in a lot of ways than both the Street Fighter movie and Mortal Kombat Annihilation, like just on a technical level. The special effects are better than Mortal Kombat Annihilation. I don't know. I'd have to look it up.
Gosh.
But see, this movie, here's the interesting thing. This movie only was made for less than $8 million. And I know Annihilation cost a lot more than that. But this movie was only made for $8 million. And comparatively, it doesn't look horrible visually. There's some interesting camera work going on. Some of the cinematography is all right. Some of it's a little flat. Like, it's definitely a first-time project. But I took some notes as I was checking out some footage. Some of the visuals are pretty shitty, and some of them are actually quite good, so it's pretty inconsistent visually, but it's not offensively bad like certain other movies are. Like, it doesn't have the shitty editing of the Street Fighter movie. Like, the Street Fighter movie, especially the fight scenes, it's a movie about a fighting game, and the fight scenes are fucking unwatchable in Street Fighter because of the way they had to edit. So this movie's more competent on a technical level than that one. You know, it does look like it's made for TV. I mentioned this in the chat. Like, not necessarily in a bad way. Like, it looks like a very good TV pilot for a Double Dragon television show. You know what I mean? Like,
that now, now that like I said, I'm probably seeing it, I could definitely see it in that kind of way.
like the visual,
And it would,
special effects. If this was the pilot for a Double Dragon TV show, I think it would be looked at a lot more fondly by people because TV shows always go off the rail with the canon anyway. So the fact that it was so different from the game story wouldn't have mattered at all. And I think in that context, visually, plot-wise, all of it, I think it would have been received much, much better. But I got that vibe from it. It looks a lot like a made-for-TV movie, but not necessarily in a bad way. Some good camera work. You know, I'm sure we all noticed the fucking Double Dragon arcade cabinet behind Billy at the very end of the movie.
I was. Oh, it was like, you can't get me here. I forgot what he said at that part. And the next thing you know, hit the cabinet. He broke the cabinet.
I mean, it's a cute Easter egg, but it's also the most like it's like the guy making the movie is grabbing you, the fucking audience member, by the back of the hair, and they're like, "Hey, check this out." Inside reference, get it? Yeah, like,
yeah, I know.
Could have been done.
I will say this about the movie, something that, like I said, I actually did kind of like. Actually, you know what? As a whole, I actually didn't have too much of a problem with this movie. I thought it was funny, honestly. It probably wasn't meant to be, but I thought it was kind of funny. And I like all of the references that are in it, like pop culture references of the time. That they would drop and stuff. I was like, yeah, this will be 2007. Okay, go ahead. Oh, Huey Lewis in the News. Wow, that's a nice 80s band. You know?
There were a lot of, one just happened right behind me now. One of my notes says, how many Scream reactions does one movie fucking need?
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of, it's happening behind me right now. Like fucking Home Alone shit. It's like,
yeah.
One per movie is acceptable, maybe, but it's goofy, but it's acceptable. This movie had like at least 5 or 6 of those. That was fucked up.
Oh,
you know, there was a lot of
Jimmy, behind you, Jimmy,
this movie's like Star Wars Episode 1 level of like awesome cast with terrible performances. You know. There's a lot of fucking funny stuff, like you said, but a lot of it's like very fucked up. The funniest thing I saw was like that scene early on when they're in the fighting tournament, you know, when that fucking little kid just gets steamrolled. like they
just shouldn't be laughing at that.
Like, did he die? Like, did that kid legit get killed? Because it looks like it. Because he just was
no. This is what happened. They added breathing sounds in post. He's okay.
I guess she parachutes. He's okay.
Oh, dude, that faceplant had me like, what the fuck? Because he looked like he got wiped the fuck out. The fuck else was like somebody. The thing I read, I was watching the shorthand on the movie. They said a Bobo looked like fat bastard from fucking went to the gym. That's a perfect description. I love that.
It looked like he had 2 giant testicles on his traps. Like it's horrifying.
The shadow effect from Shuko, like every time he turned into like the shadow thing, like that looked exactly like when Judge Doom was flattened by the steamroller.
Yeah.
That was exactly what I fucking thought of.
I thought he was turning into a boss character from Paper Mario. I wasn't sure.
The fucking, remember the mailman dude jumping off the fuck? He literally just jumps off the tower and splats. Like, what the fuck was that about? Like, boom. And then there was the other guy who swings in on the rope and later does the same thing. Boom. Like, these guys are just taking care of themselves.
Oh man.
It's not good, but there's entertainment. Johnny.
Yeah, that's the thing. It just feels like a type of movie that would be like a guilty pleasure movie. Honestly,
it's not incompetent. It's dumb. It's not anywhere near as good as it could have should have been, but it's not made as poorly as stuff like the Street Fighter movie or Mortal Kombat Annihilation. Like,
yeah, 100%
on
agree.
a technical level, it's better. It's not a good movie by any stretch, but it's just made by inexperienced people.
It just felt like a '90s action movie with some fantasy elements tossed in, and it honestly, I think it could have been any other movie, even without the Double Dragon thing, and it just, that would have really worked out for it. But they just had to throw it in there just to remind you, oh, this is a Double Dragon movie. This is a Double Dragon movie. Oh, that's Jimmy and Billy. Oh, I'm sorry, that's Jimmy and Billy. So
Jimmy and Billy. Johnny.
Actually, it's kind of funny the way this kind of worked out, because most video game movies, it's a good video game and then it's a bad movie, and then like even the video game suffers right after that. This one, it ended up being okay. You have a good video game, and then it comes up with a bad movie, and then they come out with a good game that's based on that bad movie. And
yeah,
that's actually really good. Like Neo Geo actually did like a Double Dragon fighting game that was based directly off of that movie, like even had screen segments from the movie, and it was way better than the actual movie.
Yeah.
It got mixed reviews, but it wasn't too bad.
Yeah.
I keep wanting to hear from Johnny on the movie because I feel like he might be sleeping, but we'll wake him up a little bit. Because so far he's had the least to say about the movie.
Oh no, I'm not that asleep yet. Even though, but yeah, the movie could put people to sleep. I'm not gonna say the movie's okay. Honestly, I don't really remember too much about the movie. I just remember that the movie felt like a lot of movies cheese back of the day, like the kind of like action films they had back then, and it didn't really felt like, or I don't know, like a faithful adaptation to Double Dragon, sort of, but not really. And it's just, in my opinion, it's just like a very forgettable movie. It's just there. In my opinion.
It's not offensively bad, but it's not in any way memorable or.
And you know what's really funny is that the super corny ass Street Fighter, the live acting movie, as cheesy as that movie is, even that movie is more memorable than the Double Dragon movie, in my opinion.
Well, that's because of Tuesdays.
For you, it was Tuesday.
Well, now one thing I want to say, I think also like most of these movies, like Mario, who doesn't know Mario, and of course Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat were still big things. I think Double Dragon came out way too late too. Like obviously back in its heyday, the video game movie wasn't a thing just yet. But yeah, I don't know if there was really like a big demand. Maybe after a Street Fighter movie, people were like, dude, they should make a Mortal Kombat movie or something like that. But I don't really think it was a huge demand for a Double Dragon movie. I don't think it's like people are going to be flocking to the theaters to see it, even if they were fans of the game.
Well,
But,
it's like any other business, man. When news got out that there was going to be like Super Mario Brothers movie in any business, in any industry, but especially in the entertainment industry, you have speculation, and companies look at something that's expected to be a huge hit, and they all kind of want to hitch the wagon. So when the development of Super Mario Brothers started making the rounds, a lot of these other studios were picking up properties, just like how back in the 90s, even though none of the movies got made, after Batman and Batman Returns were huge, movies were buying up superhero licenses left and right. That's how the Marvel characters for a while were spread out over 5 or 6 different companies. That's how, Sony ended up with Venom because they bought that contract in the 90s. That's how Spider-Man ended up over here. Fantastic Four ended up over here because everybody thought superhero movies were going to be huge because Batman was huge. So they started speculating and buying up all these projects, and then none of them ever got made because, he had a couple crappy superhero movies come out and killed the whole thing. But so, yeah, that's how stuff like Double Dragon got developed in the first place, was because studios looked at stuff and they said, hey, well, they're making a Super Mario Brothers movie. It hadn't tanked yet. So they were like, hey, look, we got to get in on some of that action. And, this company already probably bought Street Fighter, so that was off the table. And this other company was probably, Mortal Kombat was new, but that was probably already licensed. So this particular studio was probably looking up, like, what were some of the top grossing video game franchises? And I'm sure Nintendo probably wasn't going to let anybody play with Zelda at that point in time because they're still very protective of that. But so, yeah, if in 1992 or 3, which is when development would have started on this, if a movie studio looked up top grossing video game franchises of all time, Double Dragon would have been right up near the top in 1992, 1993. So in that context, it makes perfect sense why somebody would license the rights to Double Dragon for a movie to be released in 1994. Now, it seems late to the game considering the original game came out in 87 and the NES version in 88, but the series was still very much in the public consciousness because the sequels had come out and, it wasn't a dormant property at that time. So to me, it made sense. It didn't necessarily feel like too late, but considering that the Mario movie had already come out and cleared the whole deal, because overnight, nobody wanted to make these fucking movies. Some of them still came out, like this one, because of contractual obligations and things. But after Super Mario Brothers came out, and then after Street Fighter came out, all these companies that were buying up video game rights for movies, they didn't want to fucking touch this shit anymore. So, this movie was sort of by the time it came out, it wasn't necessarily too late, but in a way it was because the joke was out. Everybody already knew that these movies were going to be terrible.
yeah.
That's why when Mortal Kombat came out, it sort of surprised everybody because they expected it to be something like the Double Dragon movie, and it wasn't. So, but yeah, that in that sense, I think it might have been too late. It was too late in the sense that we'd already had 2 or 3 shitty video game movies to train us in thinking, oh, this is going to suck.
Yeah.
I still say it should have been a River City Ransom. I'm just saying. I don't know why. I just want to
Standards wouldn't have been as high. People wouldn't have been so disappointed because their standards wouldn't have been so high.
Yeah. But the thing about
I have a question. I'm sorry. I just had a quick question. I meant to ask this earlier regarding the arcade version of the Double Dragon games. Did any of you guys recall if the Double Dragon game was ever featured on Nick Arcade?
Shit.
That's ancient times. I don't know.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if the
day,
NES version was probably because it was so popular, or at the very least, Double Dragon 2, which was like twice as popular, pardon the pun.
It might have been. It's so fucked up because I watched that show every day, and now I can't remember what games.
I don't know why. It just feels like it was, but I don't know if it's like Mandela effect. Like maybe I'm misremembering it. But
I wouldn't be surprised if it was at least part 1 or 2 for NES. I don't know about the arcade ones, but the NES version is definitely.
I remember ActRaiser was on there a good bit, but
yes, that one I remember.
Oh, I
How
remember
did you
that.
guys, how did you guys like first find out they were even making a movie? For me, it was I remember it was an issue. I want to say it was definitely either Game Pro or Game Players.
Yeah, for me, I saw
For
pictures of
me,
it
it
on
was Game Pro.
Yeah. We're probably talking about the same issue with Game Pro. I guarantee you. They had like
Yeah,
a one-page preview with a couple screenshots. They had one screenshot of Billy and Jimmy making the face, and right there, I was like, for some reason, that picture kind of had me thinking this movie probably isn't going to be good. I don't know why. Just something about that one picture.
yeah,
And they had a
For
picture of Alyssa
me,
Milano doing superhero pose, and I was like, okay,
yeah.
maybe
I
this
remember
movie's
that
gonna
Yep,
one.
that's the one.
for me, I just saw the commercial for the movie.
Mhm.
I don't remember any fucking marketing for this thing at all. This thing must have had like a really small release. And I mean really, because I told you they only made it for less than 8 million and it only made 4. So
Yeah,
this movie like did half
It
its
was a
budget.
limited release.
we missed it because we were still selling into Mexico, so we kind of missed that. But we did see it in the store once. We bought the VHS one and those weird, those weird big fat Disney plastic case things,
I
Oh
just
yeah.
I don't
Yeah,
remember
so
a
we
single
bought that one,
promotion.
and that's how we saw it, like after the fact, because we figured, I mean, it can't be like that bad, so whatever, we'll just fucking buy it.
Oh, one other thing I can say about the movie, since I finally watched it, I did get a little nostalgic while I was watching it. Mainly because, like I said, it's supposed to be 2007, but it was obviously 1990. It's obviously the 90s, and
Yeah.
all the little 90s references. And for me, it was mostly the clothes.
Oh
So
yeah,
like,
the
oh my
flannel.
gosh, the flannel, the hair, even Alyssa Milano's hair, like that was a thing back then. So yeah, I was like, I got a little nostalgic for that kind of stuff.
Yeah. The only thing I do want to say though that
It's
Double
definitely a
Dragon is
like
kind of like hard to adapt because it is very simple. It's just street guys saving the girl from street gangs. There's really nothing. I mean, maybe play up the post-apocalyptic aspect of it, but that's there's not much to do, so to speak. But like that's why they had all this weird shit. That's why like the cartoons had, well, let's give them magic swords and magic dragon tattoos. And then the
yeah.
movies like, well, let's mutate Alabo and give them magic medallions and make the bad guy a shadow thing. And what was it? The Marvel comics also gave them like martial arts outfits, and they could just materialize weapons out of nowhere when they needed them and stuff like that.
Also,
So,
the dragon tattoos. Okay, so that's where the Arcanas came from. Thank you for that.
oh God.
It's
But yeah,
just
so
Oh
each
God,
thing added something because it's hard to. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think if we're doing a movie now, well, I don't know about the name recognition though, but I think nowadays we're a bit past the whole video games are for kids. It has to be stupid. They could probably do a more serious, darker, urban, kind of thing with the post-apocalyptic future, play it up, how people are barely surviving
Maybe,
the
Here's the
game.
maybe.
paradox.
now,
Here's the paradox.
considering the
The
owners
fact
of the Double Dragon chain is currently owned by Arc Systems Works, which is the same guys that do Guilty Gear.
Yeah.
So there you go, right there.
The
I
thing
still
is though,
say maybe. I still say maybe with that because of how they do movies now. It's like they go out of their way to like hit certain checkpoints and stuff. I mean,
yeah, it's like it's the paradox of Double Dragon being adapted into a movie or anything or a cartoon is this. It should be very easy to do, specifically because it's so straightforward. It's not like Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter where you have to explain why this person's throwing fireballs and this person can teleport and this. There's none of that in here. The only things you need to explain are what, who the characters are and why the bad guys are doing this and why Billy and Jimmy are fighting. And, it should be it should be the simplest thing in the world to adapt. However, precisely because it's so simple, almost too simple, every time they try to translate the Double Dragon property, the first thing they say is, well, what can we add to it to give it more depth and more texture? So you end up with stuff like the magic medallion or the tattoo, which has nothing to do with the games whatsoever, but yet they feel compelled to put it, even though it doesn't really add anything. All it does is complicate it. and make it more outlandish when it's really a very straightforward, very simple thing. So in a way, it's like that the thing that should make it a very easy thing to translate also ends up working against it, but not through any fault of its own, simply because the people who make movies overthink the hell out of this shit. But, you know, if it were you or I'm sure it would just be very simple action revenge type movie about a fucking gang who kidnaps this guy's girlfriend and he has to fight through the entire gang to get her back. But see, that's such a simple premise that when you go to the guys with the money to suggest $50 million to make it, you know, they might raise an eyebrow at you and say, well, how do we make our money back on something so simple? I don't know.
Well, I mean, if you look at it, you know, literally Double Dragon has the same plot and like even character design as Fist of the North Star. And
which is entirely on purpose.
And Fist of the North Star has been around for almost, 25, 30 years? And it still worked?
I mean, the only difference is they don't blow up when they punch them, though. That's the only difference. You don't have Billy Lee saying, you're already dead. Not me! You know?
You got
tomatoes.
Oh, man. But, yeah, I think we pretty much covered most of the things in terms of Double Dragon. In case you guys got any last-minute things, we're going to be bringing Poke in real quick so he could promote his EFED thing, and we could just go real quick over the dream matches. But any final comments on Double Dragon and such? At least the first game in movies. We'll eventually cover part 2 and, oh, God, part 3. But, you know.
Well, you know, we did talk about a lot of it. I think we covered most of the stuff I took notes on there. You know, as far as the movie goes, I think we covered most of that. I mean, you know, like I said, the consensus was that the movie wasn't great, but, you know, the visuals weren't terrible. So like Jupi said, Jupi banged the nail, man. That movie, for good, bad, or indifferent, it's very much a 90s time capsule. The clothes, the haircuts, you know, some of the music ain't terrible. Yeah, so it definitely a very 90s
soundtrack.
Movie. What's that?
I even forgot like the movie soundtrack.
Wasn't Coolio on the fucking soundtrack?
Oh, maybe he was everywhere back then, wasn't he?
That was during like his peak. He was big back then. But yeah, like there was that game that Panda mentioned, the 95 fighting game that ended up on the Neo Geo CD. That was actually the last fucking Double Dragon game that come out in the arcades. Believe it or not, was the fucking game based on the movie. So
yeah.
that's
if you don't count Rage of the Dragons because they lost the rights to it, but yeah. But
yeah.
Oh, I love the intro because it's like a badass remix version of the Double Dragon theme.
Yeah. On the game, do I have anything I didn't go over? Let me see here. Hello, Zoe. Zoe wants to be famous so bad. Hello, Zoe. We make you famous. We make you famous, Zoe. Oh, she give kisses. That's good, Zoe. Yeah, I mean, you know, we went over how influential the game was. It was huge. You know, I wasn't really, back then, I was mostly just sticking with my Mario and my Zelda shit. But, you know,
Guilty.
As far as beat 'em ups, though, which became one of my all-time favorite genres, I'm pretty sure if I go over to my shelf and I start pulling off stuff well into the 16-bit era, most of the games I played back then were probably beat 'em ups. So everything I played throughout my, you know, childhood owes a lot to this game. So even though this was one that I played sporadically at the time, I'm indebted to it simply because some of my favorite games of all time borrowed so directly from this game. So, and all of us, you know, it didn't create the genre, but it installed a lot of the tropes that would go on to be well worn over the years. And it's kind of a shame now that the beat 'em up genre is sort of, you know, fallen off. It's nowhere near as big as it was. Back in the day, you know, that was pretty much the stock standard genre for like licensed games. Like if there was a game coming out for a movie or a TV show, it was usually going to be a beat 'em up side scroller, you know. But this was the first beat 'em up side scroller, not the first beat 'em up, but the first scrolling beat 'em up, 2-player co-op, the weapons, all that stuff. So, you know, there was a lot to be said, but it deserved a lot to be said, you know. So my memories of it from that time are dim. I definitely have a lot of appreciation for the game and what it did for the industry. And, like I said, they sold 500,000 people an Atari 2600 cart in 1988. So what does that tell you?
Yeah.
That's the power of that game's brand when it was fresh. People were digging out their fucking Atari 2600 to play Double Dragon if that was all they had. But people needed to play this game.
It was also on the Tiger Electronics. I remember that.
So was everything.
Oh my God!
I'm pretty sure
that.
I got a Tiger Electronics game of me shaving my fucking scrote because everything got a Tiger Electronic game.
How did that one play, Panda? That was one of the ones I've always wanted. I've always wanted that fucking one, and I saw the commercials for it, but I never got to because that's the thing. I see a lot of the games and the ads and the cartoons, but I never actually got to play them till later, like Simon's Quest and Double Dragon and all that. How did that one play in the Tiger version? Was it still like beat 'em up, sort of, kind of, with the limitations, or?
Yeah,
Tiger
it
game
was still beat 'em up. It was just really glitchy. The usual tap, 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 oink, oink. Just it was real silly for the most part, but it was still pretty fun.
Yeah. A friend of mine used to own Heavy Barrel for the Tiger. And I don't know how the arcade was, but like it was like the Tiger version, I think you fought like some kind of soldier, some kind of tank, some kind of robot, some kind of thing. And each of them you had to use a different weapon. So you had to switch with each weapon because only this hurts this, only this hurts that. And one of the machines had these long arms that kind of, goes through the screen. And like as the game went on, it got harder and harder. And I remember one time I took the pride that I fucking beat that shit till the end. Because obviously there's no ending in the Tiger game. I'll just say game over. But I'm like, oh, I was so glad I actually beat that game. Like, I don't know. I was really that into the Tiger games. Like, because for a while that was all we had. You know what I mean? So I played. There was a Narc game. There was another like a competitor to Tiger. Like Acclaim made their own little ones, and Narc was very difficult. You had to go up a staircase while avoiding guys and dogs and make it to Mr. Big. And of course, Mr. Big was tough. And yeah, I also took pride in like beating it. But yeah, that's like I wish I could get that. It's just too bad that all these things are like, if you find it today, it'll cost $500 or some shit. You know what I mean?
Here's something I almost forgot to mention. And it's relevant because we talked a lot in some of our other retrospectives about when we talked about stuff like Mortal Kombat, we talked about violence in games and how hyperbolic, right? So it wasn't a new topic when Mortal Kombat came out, or even. But so it was very interesting to me that in praising the game when Double Dragon came out in '87, some of the words critics used to describe the game. It's so quaint in hindsight, right? You play Double Dragon now. But at the time it was new, critics who were praising the game, keep in mind, were using words like depraved, sick, gruesome, bloodthirsty, and nasty. Right? So that's what people in 1987, 88 were saying about Double Dragon. It was depraved, sick, bloodthirsty. Like, what? like, to be fair, they weren't trying to knock the game. They were actually citing these things as positives. But like gruesome, really? Like bloodthirsty? Like, it's a very, very tame game. All you do is punch people. There's zero blood whatsoever. But it shows you how standards were at that time, right? Very, very interesting.
I do want to say one last thing though. I love the sound effects. They really sold it. The bash, the sound effects of hitting the people and everything. They really sold it for that game. That was epic.
Love kneeing people in the face. Do that shit in real life. Knee them in the face, flip over your shoulder with a standing snapmare. Fuck them.
There you go. Oh, we got Hope in the house here.
You ever go beat up some fucking kids on the playground after playing this game, Johnny? I know you did. They took your swing or whatever. You just be like, pia, pia, pia. Tell the truth.
Go ahead, Johnny. You have to defend yourself here.
Tell the truth. Answer the question, Claire.
Johnny, you still with us?
Yeah.
Were you beating up kids in the playground back then because Double Dragon? Because you know how violence affects your mind and all that.
I did not beat nobody up, but all I can say is that this game, my memory lane is pretty bad at the moment, but it's still enough to remember that this was one of I wouldn't say the first fighting games, but the more popular ones. So once it got the concept a little bit more popular, it kind of started, I don't know, so it kind of made the beat 'em up franchise or the idea of these games that are in that beat 'em up style to be more and more popular, which, eventually, we'll get to the likes of Final Fight and Streets of Rage and games like that. But, in a way, I think that if it weren't for Double Dragon to be the most commercially successful, one of the most successful beat 'em ups and most memorable ones, I think that we wouldn't have Final Fight, we wouldn't have Streets of Rage, we wouldn't have all these other games right now if it weren't for them. So yeah, I really do think we really owe it to Double Dragon. Yeah, it's a good franchise. Oh. Now, in terms of the movies and all that other crap, that's that's just the 90s cheese. That's just them doing the cash cow. We had the crappy Mario movie, the crappy Street Fighter actors movie. So it's like, okay, we'll make a crappy Double Dragon movie. It is what it is.
Yeah.
Not as crappy as it could have been, though. But so you're telling me you never, ever, ever got your knee to the face hair flip on anybody?
Okay. I'm just going to say this right here, and it's in Johnny's defense. I do know, like, back when he was little, he was getting bullied because on a daily, people's faces would constantly hit his hand every day. Like, it was like a magnet.
Oh, jeez.
I heard, and your mom would have to confirm this for me.
Mm-hmm.
I heard that Johnny came out swinging, choking motherfuckers with the umbilical cord. That's what I heard.
Oh, God.
Like
I heard about swinging that thing like a lasso, and everybody in his way was running for their life.
I heard while Billy and Jimmy were busy arguing, Johnny came in and took Marion away,
That wouldn't surprise me either.
And then you guys wonder why I call him Johnny Rated R Rodriguez.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God.
It used to be rated
X
Rodriguez, but then we couldn't get put on YouTube no more after that.
No, I want to know, Johnny. I want to know how Johnny's ring entrance is to all of that. After you announce him, after Panda announces him, I want to know how his entrance is.
Oh, how did I come up with it?
No, man. Yeah, you're the one that has to announce him in.
Well, I mean, like,
he's a Chicago boy, so you gotta be Hildy from Chicago or something like that.
I don't know, like, the whole thing just started when, because Johnny's a pretty level-headed guy, but if you get him on a subject and it pisses him off, the age rating is going up. It's not going to be a gosh darn. It's going to be this motherfucker.
And I missed it.
That need more episodes, Wendy. But we do have Poke here, so now we're kind of moving from the Double Dragon topic here before Johnny gets us all canceled. Poke, he has his dream match for SummerSlam for his E-Fed, his Galaxy Fed thing. If you could kind of explain to us a bit more of what it's about and some of the matches, we'll kind of do a lightning round, I guess, because it is a bit late here.
Sure. Do you want me to just do like the main matches, or do you want me to go through all of them?
I would explain first what it is for the newcomers and stuff, and also for your your new audience and all that, to get them to sub to your Twitch and all that as Johnny kidnaps Marion in the background or something.